Hello, my friends. I'm Debbie Mondale. I'm the Kindermusik teacher here in Lakeland with my business, Music Connections, because I believe music connects us in so many different ways. Before getting into how music connects us, we're focusing right now on our social and emotional development of our children. And we can use music in lots of ways to be able to help them with that. But before we start using music, it's really important to understand some of the basics, some brain basics of the brain states, and meeting our needs, which I have another video on, and the crisis cycle of what happens when we go into an emotional crisis and recover from it. So I really want to share with you some slides that I prepared for us today as we talk about this a little bit. We are enjoying this opportunity to explore some of the different questions that we might have. And the questions that you might be looking to answer for your child is, how can emotions change so quickly? Do you stop and ask that question a lot? And how can they take so long to get over the emotion? Some children have different rates, or some people have different rates of how quickly they can escalate. Whoa, that escalated quickly. Or, oh my gosh, can you not get over this emotion that you're having? That was the way it was with my daughter. It took a long time for her to get over her emotions. And this is maybe going to give you a little bit of perspective on how that, what factors are influencing that. Your other question might be, what happens to our brains when we get upset? And I'll talk a little bit about brain states. Why are we not able to talk or problem solve when we are having an emotional crisis? That's a really critical factor to understand how the brain works. How can we prevent an emotional crisis? That's another question you might have consistently from the time that you start having children to never, forever. And then also, what does recovery look like when you're recovering from a crisis? So let's try to answer some of those questions. I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. Part of our brain, our brain has different parts. There's different parts of the brain have different functions, and they're all important. But how we act, how we feel, how we respond to things, it relates directly to how our brain acts and the chemicals that are running through our brain and our body, because there's a brain-body symbiosis that's going on, and our emotions are directly tied into that. As a matter of fact, our body releases certain hormones or chemicals based on some of the things that we're experiencing with our body, within our body, outside of our body, or what's going on in our brain. And so these chemicals are very effective these chemicals are actually involuntarily happening. When something happens, a chemical is released. Now, as we get older, we can choose more effectively how we deal with the release of those chemicals. We can understand how it feels and how to respond to it. Or if we learn a little bit even better control, we can help those chemicals to not be released as much. But that's huge in the future. But we have more of an ability to do that than our children do. They don't have any ability to regulate how those chemicals are being released into their body and their brain. And so it is important for us to be with them to help co-regulate what they are feeling and experiencing, and to help them to learn how to deal with stressors and stress. So let's talk a little bit more about those things. Let's talk about our brain states for the first part. At the base of our brain is our brain stem, and that when we are acting in that part of our brain that is our survival state. This chemicals are released that take us into our brain state, and that helps us to survive. We were able to survive a tiger attacking us. We were able to survive a swarm of bees coming around. We were able to survive hunger and being able to act in order to get something. And the main ways that we respond to those are involuntary. We are either going to, babies will cry when they have those feelings because that's going to get you to help them, and that allows them to survive. As we get older, we can fight things that are aggressive to us. We can, whatever we perceive as aggressive to us, we might flee away from it or run away from it, or we might be able to hide. Those are some of our almost involuntary actions because our brain, our body takes over because it can't rely on the time that it takes for our brain to think about it. It goes directly to making our body act. And so when a child is in a crisis state, that takes them back to their crisis state. I really want to mention that these pictures are coming from the Conscious Discipline training by Becky Bailey, and I'm going to share with you more about how you can find out more. I'm giving you a little snippet. She describes it so much better. I highly recommend you look at the video that's coming up. So we have the survival state. We have our limbic systems kind of in the mid portion of our brain, and it is where our emotions are happening. And these emotions are so important for us. Our emotions make us human. Our emotions help us seek what we need. It helps us to be connected to other people. Our brain stem, our survival state, helps us to be safe, whereas our limbic system can help us get what we need to feel loved and connected and valued. So those are really important to be able to have. And in order to get to our executive state, this green section that we have here in our frontal lobe, we have to feel safe and we have to feel connected and loved in order to be able to use our higher level thinking, or our thinking brain. Becky Bailey calls it conscious discipline. And when we are safe and connected, then we can be curious. And that is our optimal state that we want to be in. You know, some people say that we want to be happy, and actually the best state for us to be is not necessarily that state of happy giddiness, but just calm, because we know we're safe, connected because we know we're loved, and that we're curious because we're free to act. We're free to act as ourselves and to be ourselves. Now here's a picture of Becky Bailey and her conscious discipline training. It's amazing. This one is available as a TEDx talk. It's called Wiring the Brain for Success. Please look it up. You will definitely benefit from understanding the different states of the brain beyond what I am telling you in this moment. So here it is. This is our best self. We want to be calm and connected and curious and free to explore and act as our authentic self. We don't want to have to pretend to be anyone else, because sometimes people that we're with expect things from us. And when we feel those expectations that are not true to our core, then we can't truly act as ourselves. And so as parents, the best thing we can do is recognize the best strengths of our child. And when they are being their authentic self, to just be there with them and appreciate it and love them for who they are. And this ability to be calm and connected means that we're meeting their needs. There's needs that we have with our body to be safe and to have food and to feel comfort. And when we feel that comfort, then we can feel all of those things. That's taking care of our physiological needs. But we also have the need to feel loved and valued and connected with at least one other person, that person is in this process with us, and we know that we can, that they are going to meet our needs, that we are going to meet each other's needs. Truly, if we're not even talking about being parents, as adults, we still have these needs as well, and we need to know that we're in this together with at least one other person. So that connected feeling helps us to be able to do that. And our brain has certain needs. And I have a whole nother video on meeting all of these needs. But we have, we need stimulation so that we're learning, because our brain has a need to make connections on how the world works and how we can interact in this world to make it work for us. And so these are the needs that we have, that when those needs are met, then we can do what we need to do. As a matter of fact, let's say that our needs is this bucket, and maybe we wake up and we have some needs already met, but we need to be fed. So we get some food. We need to be connected with someone else. So we have some interactions and playful interactions with somebody that loves us. And then, we have some interesting toys or activities to play with. And so that gives us what we need so that we can be calm and connected and curious, because we have the things that we need to act on those. I'm going to talk a little bit more about filling buckets in another time, but that helps us to be ourselves. So our baseline is in our executive state: calm, connected, and curious. But what happens when we have a stressor in our life? I'm going to make this as quick and simple as possible. If there is a tiger that we see and we know that we're in danger, or we could be in danger, that's a trigger. We see the tiger, and that is prepping our body to release that hormone. It's saying, oh, are we going to need to do that? And then maybe we can see that there's an agitated we start getting agitated because maybe the tiger is moving around and getting closer to us. They haven't seen us yet, but we are on higher alert, and that our chemicals in our body are starting to make changes to our system. And if we see the tiger look at us and come at us, then our chemicals in our body change how we act. It takes blood from our brain and into our body so that we are stronger and we're faster, and we are acting on impulse rather than choosing how we act. Because when we're in a survival state, we can't let our brain take time to make a decision and then act. Sometimes we have to act right away in an involuntary way in order to flee away from, or to fight, or to hide, in order to survive and to keep ourselves protected and safe. And so you can see when by this chart that I've adapted here, that we're in our executive state when we're calm, and we're in our emotional state when we're looking at the trigger. We're looking at the tiger, and we're feeling that emotion of fear, and that is welling up inside us. We can feel that feeling. We don't might necessarily name it, but as soon as that tiger looks at us and starts running toward us, we go straight into survival state. And there are other things in life that make us feel that way. But once we are safe from that tiger, we don't just automatically go back to calm, connected, and curious. We don't go back to our baseline state. What happens is that we are flooded with these chemicals, and it activates our sympathetic system, and we have to activate our parasympathetic system in order to be able to get those chemicals out of our system so that we can go back to being calm and connected, a normal state. We're going to de-escalate. It takes time even afterwards, because our heart rate is up when we're in a crisis state, and we need to be able to get our heart rate to go down. And as a matter of fact, as we de-escalate, often as we use up all that energy to fight off what we have to fight off, or run away from what we need to run away from. If we haven't done those actions and used the energy and the chemical that's in our body for that, then we, during our de-escalation state, there needs to be something that we're doing that can process that out of our body, which is I'm not going to talk about how to do that, just the fact that when we use up all of that energy, we will go into the post-crisis state, because we've used up all of that energy and we are drawn out, we are tired, we might need to sleep, we might have a migraine, we might, it's all kinds of things that could affect us, but we cannot get back to our normal state until we've gone through that depleted cycle and been able to recover from that. So that's what our recovery process looks like, is this de-escalation from our crisis cycle and going through this post-crisis depletion to be able to get back to our normal state and be able to get back to calm and connected and curious. And we are much more able to be able to de-escalate and recover if we are connected with someone else. They're going, as a matter of fact, it's called co-regulation. As a parent with a child, we are helping a child deal with their emotions. A critical factor in being able to co-regulate a child and help de-escalate an escalated child is the focus of this quote. An escalated adult cannot de-escalate an escalated child. So as we see a stressor, let's say it's a tiger. Okay, it's okay. We know that we're going to have to go into crisis cycle to be able to survive. And so we're going to together go through this and help each other survive, and then go through the de-escalation process afterwards. But if your child is going through, has a trigger that you may not even know, it might not be a tiger, your child is being triggered, their emotions raising often escalates us, and our emotions start to raise. We start to feel that feeling on the inside. But if we can recognize that is happening to us, and we can say to ourselves, this is a Becky Bailey's coming straight from her, I am safe, I can handle this. I am going to help this child through their storm. And so if we can stay calm as the child is starting through the storm, maybe we can help them avoid that storm. Or if they're going to go through that whole storm, then we can be there for them and with them to be able to help to be with them during that storm cycle, so that we can help them along the way and support them as much as possible. That is so critical for us to be able to maintain our calm. My son was a teenager when I first learned about this. Sorry, I changed the slide, but my son was a teenager when I first learned about this. And when he was escalating, I was escalating, and we were arguing and fighting, and there was a lot of yelling going on. And so when I learned about this through a variety of sources, including the MANT training and the Becky Bailey training and other training, I recognized that I needed to just take a calm, find my calm. And then while my child was escalating, I remained calm. And at first it totally freaked him out that I was not escalating with him. And he escalated higher because he thought that that was what was needed for him to be able to get what he needed, was to see me escalated. But when I remained calm and he realized that he could get back to his calm quicker if I remained calm, it was huge. I think he was 13 at that time. So this is the MANT system. I got this image from them. They gave me permission to use it. Because I think it just really helps to give us a visual to understand the crisis cycle and what we can do to intervene at the different aspects of when we are in this different cycle. So it doesn't show it exactly the same way, but it does show some beautiful images here. Our baseline, Matt calls it the baseline, which is the calm, connected, and curious. And that's when we're having our baseline. Now, if our needs are not being met, like my little bucket here, if my needs are not being met, then we're already causing stressors. And if we have a little bit of stressor, then if something other happens, then it might escalate the situation a lot more quickly. When you say, wow, that escalated quickly, it's not typically because of the one stressor that's a trigger that's happening. It could be because our cup our cup of needs that needs to be met is not full. We are much more able to handle other triggers if we are feeling, if our needs of our body and our brain and our emotions are being met, then we can handle triggers and deal with it. But if we are not meeting those needs, that will escalate more quickly. But a trigger, for example, let's use a really quick example of my daughter going to the doctor and needing a shot for a vaccination. No other reason, just she's a healthy child, she needs a vaccination. That needle is a trigger. And if I could take that needle away, she would no longer be triggered. She'd get back to her calm self fairly quickly. But the vaccination is needed. And so what kind of support can we give them in that moment to help them to have as less stress as possible? But my daughter continued to be stressed with this. And so she escalated, and that raised her, the feelings that were inside. There were more of this chemical being dumped into her body saying, you need to survive, you need to act on this. And so she was getting more agitated and moving around and avoiding this needle that needed to be done. And I was using my best techniques of remaining calm and helping her to see, helping her to know that it was important and that they were just trying to help her. But she continued to escalate, and I had to set limits. That's one of the things that you do at this stage is you set limits. Like, look, I need to make sure that you're safe. And so I'm going to hold onto your arms so that you can either sit still. This is the time to give options. You can either sit still or I can hold your arms. And then she can make a choice. Or you can hold me, you can squeeze my hand, and that will help you to be prepared for that. And so it did not help. She escalated until she was fighting and her arms were going all over the place. I continued to talk to her, but I did have to hold her so that she would be safe while she was able to get the shot. At that point in time, the stressor was finally removed, but that didn't release all of the stress that was built up in her system. Just because the stressor is gone doesn't mean that the stress that is built up inside because of the stress is gone. It takes that time to de-escalate. And so there's some cooling off processes. And that's another good time. That takes us actually back down once the stress is gone and we are not in that fighting system anymore, then we're back down to our emotional brain. When we are in that fighting system, we don't think well. We don't act. There's no amount of talking that will help us to get back down. It's a matter of that's how our body is going to act. And as parents, the only thing that we can do is be there with them and do whatever we need to do to help them be safe. But they need to know that they're not left alone. That's why I think timeout is not the best choice for someone who's in the middle of a crisis cycle or even in the middle of de-escalating. They need to know that they're connected. And when they know that they're connected and loved, then that can help them to de-escalate more quickly. So in the de-escalation process, they can also start to make choices again. So you can say, okay, shall we go for a walk? Do you need to run around in the yard? Do you need to jump on the trampoline? Do you need to curl up on your bed and cover up with a blanket? Maybe sometimes for some children, a weighted blanket can help them to get that de-stressing and that de-escalation going. And we talked about that calming, that that dip that goes down when their energy is depleted and they just need to rest. That's another good time that they can make options. That's a good time for a peace corner, so that they can sit there and use sensory bottles or use something that they can help to just, if they're not just sleeping, to help calm themselves down and get back to where we can just meet their regular needs of their body and their heart, to make sure they know they're connected, and to have their brain give them something else. That's one of the reasons why distraction works so good, is because the brain is always looking for ability to get that stimulation they need to grow. And I hope that that helps you to understand a little bit more about the crisis cycle. I think I've really kind of talked about all of the different things that we need to do, but I'll kind of review it really quickly. When it's important for us to observe our children so that we can recognize what they look like when they're calm and connected and curious, because that's where we want to help them be as often as possible. Process of observing and understanding and acting is critical as we have triggers that occur. So we just need to recognize how our child is acting different when they're not calm and connected and curious. How are they acting different, so that you're going to recognize how they're acting when their needs are not being met or when they're having a trigger. And then we can act to remove the stress or to meet a need so that they can get back to their normal self, their executive state. So that is what we do when we can see them starting to have some feelings. If their feelings are increasing and they're getting into their emotional state where they're escalating, then we just have to be able to recognize that they're in an emotional state and understand that they're not going to be thinking and reasoning as well, because they're more filled with emotion and the chemicals that go along with that. So there are limitations to what they can do, but they can't think of it on their own. They can't problem solve on their own. But what you can do them is give options. That's a perfect time to be able to give options, to be able to help them to make choices that will help them to get out of the way of a stressor, to meet their needs, or to have the support from you or whatever to be able to meet their needs, to help them to calm back down and de-escalate. Making sure in this state that they know that they have someone on their side, that we are in this together. It's a critical part of being able to help them to regulate their emotions, because at this point in time, you're co-regulating with them. Because if they know that you're on their side, it's not going to escalate them more. If they feel like you're trying to make them do something or calm down when they're not ready to calm down, then they are not going to see you on the same side. They're going to feel disconnected, which is going to make them escalate more. So that being able to be connected is critical. This is also when you want to make sure that they understand that there are limits to what they can do, because it is your job and it is their job to make sure everyone is safe. And if they're not able to help make sure that everyone is safe, that you will step in and you will make sure that they are safe and that everyone is safe. And so you might say, if they are in that escalation phase and they might hit someone, you might say, this is not safe. And I need to make sure, you need to make sure that everyone is safe, and hitting is not safe. What's another way that we can get what we need from this? And then they know that if they continue to hit, then you will step in to make sure that no one is going to get hurt, that everyone is safe. And when they can see it in that light, when they can consistently see that you're going to be doing that and that the key component is safety, then they're going to recognize that, and you at times when they're not in the crisis cycle, you can help them understand other ways to be able to get their needs met. But if they're in the escalation phase, or if they're in the crisis cycle, you're not going to be able to problem solve with them. Talking with them is not going to be the best way because they can't use their thinking brain. They're in their emotional brain, or they're actually going through it into their survival brain. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. If they actually get to the crisis cycle, just understand it's important to recognize when they're in that crisis cycle and they're past the escalation phase. What does it look like when your child is actually in the crisis cycle? When you know that their thinking brain is no longer accessible, that their emotional brain is no longer accessible. They're in their survival brain, and the most important thing for you to do is to make sure that they and other people stay safe. We have to stay calm, and we have to stay nearby in order to make sure that they're safe. And then just let it play out. Sometimes, for example, one time my son went into a crisis cycle when we were in the middle of the store, and he was starting to throw things off of the shelves in the store. There's no time to leave the store. I sat down with him. I held him in my arms. He was maybe about 6 years old, I think. And he was not regulating himself. He was in a crisis state. And I just held him. I let one of his arms go as soon as I felt as it was safe to do so, because he can move his arm. And I was sitting behind him, so he couldn't hurt me, but he could move his arm. And as soon as I felt like he was calming down enough, I let go of his other arm so that he didn't feel constricted. Because when you feel constricted, then you're not going to, then it's going to make you still feel not safe. You're going to stay in that survival mode because you don't feel like you can act in order to keep yourself safe. Even though someone else is trying to help you, you feel constricted, and that is not making you feel safe. So being able to give them some movement, that also is from the MANT crisis training, and is being able to let them have as much freedom as they can and still be safe. So once they get past that, maybe your child is not getting to the point where they're not being safe, but at some point in time they might, and so it's important to know. When I was holding him and I felt his body relax, then I knew that he was in the de-escalation phase, and I could talk to him. It's like, okay, we have some options here. We can sit here for a little bit longer, and I can hold you as needed to make sure that you know that I'm with you in this, and we're going to do this together. Or we can stand up and we can walk out of the store, or we can go back to shopping. Get what we need so we don't have to come back and do this later. What is your choice? What will make it so that we can do this together? And so giving choices at that time is the best state. One of the things that I did for him, I gave him the option to sit in the basket. Even though he's pretty big, he liked to be able to sit in the basket. And so I moved everything to the front part of the basket and put him in the section where he would fit. And then I let him sit in the basket as he was de-escalating. And I got the one other thing that I really, really needed to get, and we went to the checkout line, and I continued to talk to him and letting him know that I was proud of him for being able to calm down. I think sometimes when our children start to do what they need to do, we're still angry about what happened and want to punish them. I don't know if that's the right word, but want to we're still feeling that that crisis cycle in us, and we're looking at what their worst behavior was and still responding to their worst behavior rather than recognizing the calming down and what they're doing now. And so it's really important to stay in the present moment when you're going through the latter part of this cycle, so that you're not going to re-escalate that situation by focusing on the worst of what they did. The worst of what they did is in their survival state. And that's a lot of times involuntary. Now that we're getting back to their emotional state, they are having more ability to choose. We can't problem solve with them at that point in time, but what we are just doing is de-escalating that situation. When we got into the car, he was able to relax. Part of this is I could see what recovery looks like, and so I knew that him being in his car seat and being strapped in and was safety feeling for him. And there's music that we have in the car that we were able to listen to that continued to help him process that recovery cycle. When we got home, we made sure that he got fed and that he got as much love as possible, and that we gave him something interesting to do, like Legos was huge for him in the recovery process. That was part of what was in his peace corner. My daughter really liked the sensory bottles, and that was part of her recovery system, as well as warm fuzzy blankets and things. Very sensory child. We'll talk about sensory issues in another category. I hope that gives you a good big picture view. There's so much more information out there, but sometimes it's hard to piece together this, that, and the other and kind of see it as a whole. And I hope that this gives you what you need to be able to understand where we want to be and how to get to that point, even when the stressors occur, and how to deal with the residual stress that's coming afterwards. So I'm going to stop the share. And I just want to tell you that you can do this. You can stay calm. You can choose how you act in the situation when your child is going through an emotional storm. At each phase, you can do this. It's hard, especially when this is not the way that we were raised. Maybe we were raised with continuing escalation on both sides. But we do the best we can as parents with what we know. And when we know more, we can do better. And that just take the idea of a perfect parent and understand that's not a word or a concept there is no perfect, because it's just all increments of getting better at meeting the needs of our child, all increments at getting better of meeting the needs of ourselves. And a lot of this crisis cycle we can look at and say, how can we respond to our own crisis cycle so that we are not escalating the situation to the point where we can no longer think and that we get into our survival state. Let me know your questions. I'm happy to talk and answer some different things. I'd love to chat with you. One of the things we do in Kindermusik is give you some ways to help connect with your child and help them to meet the need to feel connected, as well as giving you some strategies to help as your child begins to escalate, to help redirect their attention so they're not seeing the stressor. There's a lot of ways that we can just work together with each other and connect with each other and help each other. So let's do that. Let's connect. I have a Facebook page, group, Instagram, and of course we get together and chat as families in Kindermusik. So with our Kindermusik here in Lakeland. So help us out by giving me some feedback on what this looks like for you or what questions you have about this, and maybe look in the comment section below the video, and I'll have some other resources to be able to help you to get more information. And some of the other videos that I have to share, especially about the filling the needs of our children, understanding that, as well as the sensory information transitions. I have a lot of other articles and videos that can be a good resource for you. I don't know if it helped. I hope it helps. I want to wish you well. Thank you.